And now, without any further ado, we're going to go straight to the business of the day. And I'm going to ask our chair, Chris Soteropoulos, to take over the meeting.
Thank you and good afternoon all. AK Tareen is a distinguished expert in international trade and investment, bringing over 37 years of experience in both commercial diplomacy and leadership across both governments and private sectors. He has effectively represented countries, governments, agencies, businesses and brands across Australia, India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Europe and the United States, fostering strategic partnerships and demonstrating a profound understanding of international trade complexities, investment dynamics and geopolitical issues. Notably, Mr. Tareen is recognised as Australia's longest-serving commercial representative in India, where he held senior leadership positions with both federal and state governments, Austrade and the government of South Australia for nearly 2 decades. You don't look that old, though. After stepping down as the Senior Trade Commissioner for South Australia, Tareen established a boutique international business consulting firm, AK Strategic Consulting, that assists countries, governments, agencies and businesses in developing new economic opportunities. Now, this is the interesting part. Tareen is a committed Rotarian for 2 decades with the Rotary Club of Madras and a Paul Harris Fellow. He holds a distinction in mechanical engineering and is passionate about music, cars and cricket. He has a son, Baz, who is a member of our club, and a daughter, Saba, who lives in Boston. Tareen's contributions to global business have been recognised through several esteemed awards, including Citizen of the Year, TED Ambassador, the Indo-Australian Awards for Meritorious Services, the Asia Arab Award and the Sevna Ratna Award. After decades of living and working overseas, Tareen is now back in Melbourne for good to advise Australian organisations, develop international business, and with a bit of pressure from us, to join our club as well. So please, Tareen, welcome and come to the podium.
Thank you, Chris, for that wonderful introduction. Past President Mary, fellow Rotarians, ladies and gentlemen, good day. It's indeed an honor for me to address Australia's oldest, the first, and probably amongst the world's best Rotary clubs, the Rotary Club of Melbourne, this afternoon. Thank you for the kind invitation. It brings me great joy to see your club passionately embodying Rotary's motto of service above self. Over the past 104 years, your work has enriched this vibrant city and transcended borders with your distinguished members making significant contributions to shaping Australia and its global relations. Interestingly, Rotarian James Wheeler Davidson, the founder of your club, is also the founder of my club, the Rotary Club of Madras, which is celebrating its centenary in 4 years from now. It has been my privilege to attend some of your meetings and events, and I know many of you personally. With my son Baz being a member here, I truly feel I'm among friends and family today. International trade is a timely topic, particularly as many seek to understand the implications of recent developments brought about by tariff wars. In our interconnected world, a global perspective coupled with an understanding of geopolitics and experience in international trade and investment is essential for analyzing these developments. Congratulations to your club for your foresight in choosing this topic even before Mr. Trump was selected. Over the next 20 minutes, it seems like I need 20 hours, but I'll try and stick to 20 minutes. I'm excited to share my thoughts and personal experiences gathered over my 37 years in international trade. I've been fortunate to collaborate with governments and businesses across not just Australia and India, but extending beyond to South Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and the US. As Chris mentioned, my career has also included advising the Australian federal and state governments as a trade commissioner. Since I'm amongst Rotarians here, let me highlight the critical role of trade as an engine for building communities, promoting peace, and fostering prosperity, much like Rotary itself. I have a passion for connecting people, and I have dedicated my career to bridging connections across countries and continents through business opportunities. Sometimes opportunities are clear, Other times, they need to be creative. When you connect business people and present them with opportunities, trade happens. Trade, as you know, is one of the oldest crafts known to humankind, and historically, it has played a crucial role in connecting civilizations and uniting populations. The vital function continues today. When people meet, they exchange not just goods and services, but also ideas, culture, languages, practices, and experiences. Thus, trade serves as a powerful tool for enhancing mutual understanding, appreciation, and respect amongst communities and countries, ultimately reducing conflicts and fostering peace and prosperity. As Steve Jobs eloquently stated, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. When I embarked on my career in international trade, I had no clear vision of where I would end up. I was a creature, not a creator of circumstances, as I was navigating a rapidly changing world. The Cold War was ending, Soviet communism was faltering, countries were dismantling trade barriers and embracing free market economies. A rules-based global trading system designed to mitigate trade disputes was coming into existence with the establishment of the WTO in 1995. Australia, under Mr. Paul Keating's government, saw a significant opportunity to grow exports and investments when India, after 4 decades of following socialist policies that had almost severely constrained its economy, opened its market to foreign companies. I was appointed Australia's first commercial representative in South India, tasked with swiftly establishing and managing 3 brand new offices across Chennai, which used to be called Madras then, Bangalore, and Hyderabad, and develop business opportunities for Australian companies. Remarkably, I was managing half of the 6 hosted offices in India at that time. Today, Australia shares a flourishing relationship with India across various domains, including trade, investment, culture, defense, sports, and politics. Bilateral trade has surged to approximately $50 billion, bolstered by an economic cooperation agreement and ongoing free trade discussions. Both nations are integral to the strategic Quad alliance, with nearly 1 million Indians calling Australia home today. However, the situation was quite different 3 decades ago when I started. Many of you might recall that mutual awareness was limited. Indians knew very little beyond cricket, koalas, and kangaroos, while Australians had a general understanding of elephants, maharajas, monkeys, and snakes. When my Australian friends would ask whether elephants and snakes roam the streets of India, it often proved challenging for me to shift the conversation to business opportunities. At that time, bilateral trade was less than even $1 billion, and even politically, the relationship didn't seem to be a priority. For example, no Indian Prime Minister had visited Australia for 28 years. I had to begin, obviously, building the brand Australia in the region. Despite the challenging environment, and even as the new offices and my teams were settling in, we were successful in facilitating over $500 million of trade and investment within my first 3 years in the role, leading to my extended position in India. Being of Indian origin afforded me the advantage of understanding local languages and business practices, as well as navigating cultural nuances like the art of the nod, which I'm sure many of you know. It needs an expertise to know what the Indians are saying. Are they saying yes or no? Or that's a specialization that one needs to have before you go to India for doing business. And interpreting complex regulations effectively. My background as an engineer enabled me to grasp a variety of products and services. Moreover, my experience as area sales manager at Shell International, combined with my passion for sales, significantly contributed to my success in this role. I was later entrusted by the federal government with the additional responsibility of devising and leading Australia's industry strategies in India and South Asia across several sectors. Over the course of 7 years, the export and investment impact directly attributed to me, as per a government release, had reached $767 million in 7 years of me joining Australia. And Australian companies consistently rated my office as the best in client satisfaction. In 2005, which is after 10 years with the federal government, I was appointed the inaugural Senior Trade Commissioner of South Australia in South Asia by the then Premier, the Honourable Mike Ryan. This role extended beyond trade and investment to include responsibilities such as education, migration, tourism, defense, sports, and culture. As you know, South Australia is probably the only state that has a migration target to reach 2 million by 2050. During my 8 years in this role, South Australia's exports to India had increased by over 700%, and my overall contribution to Australian economy until then exceeded $2 billion, underscoring the power of connections and in international trade. However, working in India does not come without its significant challenges. I'm sure many of you know this. It is one of the most difficult countries to do business, navigating a vast market of 1.4 billion people with 36 states and territories, each with its own language, culture, food, and regulations, poses complexities. The intricate business culture, cumbersome bureaucracy, rapidly shifting regulations, a slow judiciary, and issues with corruption all add up to the difficulty of the landscape. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted. At times, it can feel like a taxing game of snakes and ladders. One could be extremely busy all through the year, without seeing much in the way of tangible results. Probably the biggest challenge I faced was when the bilateral relations slumped to the lowest point when Australia condemned and imposed economic sanctions on India following India's testing of India's Pokhran-2 nuclear tests. In 1998, supply of uranium was contingent upon India signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and India reacted strongly to these measures by removing all official access to Australia. The then Australian High Commissioner, Mr. Rob Lowry, and I have some very interesting stories to share, but in private. Another setback occurred around 2009 and 10, more recently, when the Indian media sensationalized attacks on Indian students across Australia. So this situation negatively impacted our bilateral relations and especially university enrollments. Everywhere I would get asked, why are you beating up our children in Australia? I undertook several public policy initiatives and participated in multiple media interviews, I think 30 or 40 media interviews across TV and newspapers to reassure prospective students about their safety in Australia. Now, the role of Trade Commissioner is critical, not only for helping Australian companies seize market opportunities, but also for protecting them against failures, potential failures. As seen with several Australian banks, while trade agreements and strategic documents hold value, implementation is the mantra for success and needs practical business knowledge and real-world experience. Armchair expertise would not be able to provide high-value strategic advice to the Australian government or businesses regarding India. I've seen several strategic documents and policies and strategies either fail or kept getting revised for the same reason. The next lesson I learned in my career is very crucial. It's no matter what role you perform. As you can see in my career, I started as a mechanical engineer, but my journey has taken me through various roles like lecturer, researcher, salesman, marketer, commercial diplomat, consultant, and entrepreneur across diverse continents and cultures. You might wonder, what is the common thread amongst all these varied functions and geographies? Any guesses? It's the people. It ultimately comes down to connecting individuals and building relationships. I would like to share a significant lesson I've learned here. Business, number one, business is personal. It's not organizations or countries that conduct business. It's the people representing them who engage in business. To succeed, therefore, we must learn to connect with one another on a personal level. Second, embrace diversity. We need to appreciate our differences and recognize that regardless of where they live, how they appear, or what languages they speak, people share similar needs, desires, and aspirations. By respecting each other's backgrounds and cultures, we can forge authentic and meaningful relationships. I always quote this example of the failure of Daimler-Chrysler merger, which was touted as the biggest corporate wedding. The German giant with an American giant, but it couldn't even last a few years because despite the size and despite their synergy, both being automotive majors, it broke up because the German and American culture just couldn't integrate at the ground level. So that's just to sort of emphasize on the importance of culture. I've also learned, albeit in a rather painful yet humorous way, that what may be regarded as a brilliant idea in one country may not carry the same weight or value in another. This underscores the necessity for cultural awareness and adaptability in global business interactions. Let me share an interesting anecdote with that probably one of the most humorous one. I think it was late 1990s when Mr. Tim Fisher was the Deputy Prime Minister, Trade Minister. Australia had done something very unique that nobody else in the world had done until then. which was to put together a car purely by the component makers. For the first time, there was a car that was put together not by car manufacturer, but by the entire component industry across Australia. It was called Access Australia Project. So we chose the best of what Australian component industry had to offer and built a car with that. That was sort of hailed as a masterstroke around the world. I was leading Australia's automotive strategy in South Asia there. We went to Detroit, we went to Singapore. Finally, it came to India at the Delhi Automotive Show. So what was special about this car? It was too futuristic for the time. It was almost like a James Bond car. For example, you voice activated system, engine on, engine would start. Move, it moves. Open the door, it would open the door. Headlights on, AC on, whatever, So we went to meet one of the top CEOs of Indian auto major to show this. And we had the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Automotive. I think it was Mr. Mike Ahern. And we sat down with him to say, we were very proud of what we had achieved. And obviously, nobody had questioned our sort of ingenuity until then. So the Indian chairman and his team we are sitting across the table, and we explained to him the features of the car and how. And we are telling him the engine on, it starts the engine, it moves the engine, it stops and open the door. That guy kept looking at us without any expression. So we were what's it? Then he took his own time and how much did he spend on this? I don't remember. I think we had spent about $15 million, something like that. I don't remember exactly. He said, what a waste. And sorry, what a waste. See, in India, everybody has a driver. I have a driver. I pay him $500 a month. I said, driver, engine on. He starts the engine. Driver, open the door. He opens the door for me. I just pay $500 per month. And you guys have spent $15 million on this? So, I mean, we felt humiliated, but within no time, we all start bursting into laughter. So this is, the appreciation of cultural differences and how people view one thing from the other side. Coincidence is the word we use when we can't see the levers and pulleys, as Emma Bull wisely observed. My career coincided with the liberalization of the world economy, thriving during the era of free movement of products, services, capital, technology, ideas, and people across borders. This global interdependence has expanded market access for suppliers, giving consumers more choices and competitive prices, while fostering stable international relations. Unprecedented global economic growth has led to significant job creation and improved living standards, ultimately lifting millions of people out of poverty. I think China and India are classic examples of this. Previously, trade aligned closely with national foreign policy, but globalization has shifted this dynamic, allowing economic opportunities to shape that very policy now. However, it's vital to acknowledge that the benefits of globalization are not universally accepted. Critics argue it has widened the gap between wealthy and poor nations, shifted jobs away from developed countries, shifted jobs away from developing countries, enabled large multinationals to exploit cheap labor, and contributed to cultural homogenization. Additionally, an interconnected world can lead to rapid disruptions, as evidenced by the global financial crisis in 2008. Now, let us return to the present. We find ourselves witnessing a significant shift with tariffs and trade restrictions resurfacing on the global stage, indicating a full circle moment for those of us who have dedicated our careers to fostering openness in trade. Remarkably, a tariff war has been waged against the entire world, including a seemingly remote island that's only populated by penguins. These developments raise questions about the stability of the rules-based order. Are we experiencing a reversal where the pendulum of trade dynamics is now swinging back? Is trade being weaponized? These are critical questions that demand our attention. To address these effectively, we must clear up several misconceptions surrounding trade, imports, and tariffs. I use trade as a broad term that includes investment as well, as I believe investment is another side of trade of the same coin to secure long-term trade benefits. Imports play a crucial role in a country's economy and should not be perceived negatively, as some may suggest. The current tariff war largely revolves around the belief that some countries are not importing as much as they're exporting to the US. The tariffs imposed on them are also calculated mostly based on trade deficits in relation to their exports. Take the US-China tariff war, for instance. It resembles like a scorecard of a live sporting event, 145 versus 125, when I last heard, if you will. It is essential to recognize that no one truly wins in tariff wars. The implications extend far beyond the immediate nations involved. Countries need to import specific items that serve as essential ingredients for manufacturing finished products. For example, the US must import critical minerals to produce semiconductor chips. Imported goods can foster competition in domestic markets while complementing local industries. Consider Australian apples, for example, which thrive due to the counter-seasonal production in India. When India doesn't have its apple season, they import Australian apples, and there's apples throughout the year. Overall, imports are therefore integral to the international trade ecosystem, contributing to economic growth, enhancing consumer choice, and improving living standards while fostering global collaboration and interdependence. Tariffs are not inherently negative either. They can serve a purpose when imposed temporarily to protect local industries until they can compete effectively. However, such protection should be limited in scope and duration. A delicate balance must be maintained between safeguarding domestic industries and reaping the benefits of free global marketplace. Now, let us turn our focus back to the current crisis, arguably the most significant man-made economic crisis of at least my lifetime. Long-standing alliances and partnerships forged over the past 7 to 8 decades are beginning to unravel, while new alliances are emerging. For example, Canada is seeking closer ties with Europe, moving beyond its traditional North American sphere, while BRICS nations are broadening their membership and strengthening collaboration, even discussing the potential for a common currency to counter the dominance of the US dollar. Furthermore, US-Russia relations appear to be improving, as evidenced by the recent US vote in favor of Russia in the United Nations General Assembly, making a notable shift in contrast to the stance of the European Union. Meanwhile, Europe is preparing for a summit with China later this year. Who imagined this even 3 months ago? This shifting geopolitical landscape, compounded by economic uncertainty, has resulted in significant disruptions to global supply chains. Countries are exploring new sources and markets, leading to goods piling up at ports, often with unclear destinations. This congestion results in delays and inefficiencies, ultimately driving up prices for end consumers. Moreover, restrictions on movement and barriers to the exchange of ideas, technologies, and critical resources, such as rare earth minerals, are impeding innovation. This chaos and instability have led to recessions and rising unemployment in some parts of the world, while simultaneously creating new opportunities for others. For instance, due to the substantial tariffs on Chinese products, India's share in the production and export of Apple phones is increasing. There is a growing potential for real conflicts as nations may retaliate beyond economic measures. Many observers draw parallels to the Great Depression of the 1930s, which significantly contributed to the outbreak of World War II. However, I remain hopeful that we can avoid repeating those grave mistakes of the past. It is essential to recognize the implication of this rollback of progress and the urgency with which we must advocate for dialogue, cooperation, and restoration of free trade principles. We need a multifaceted approach to address the current challenges. Some of the things I have in mind, which I would like to share with you, is one is global leadership and cooperation, which is, I think, very critical. World leaders must unite to address the concerns of marginalized communities and nations that have not benefited from globalization. It is essential to implement measures for course correction within the global trading system under the WTO, ensuring fairness and inclusivity. Second, maturity to address tariff challenges. Global leaders need to demonstrate maturity and a strategic approach in dealing with the sudden and seemingly unreasonable challenges posed by the US trade policies. A tit-for-tat response is not a mature option, as trade wars carry the real danger of escalating into full-blown conflicts, as I mentioned earlier. Third, reviving diplomacy. Open dialogue is crucial. When leaders resort to communicating through the media instead of engaging in constructive discussions, diplomacy falters. Leaders must prioritize diplomatic efforts over short-term political gains focused on domestic matters, as neglecting diplomacy can lead to long-term harm to international relations. Fourth, healing emotional wounds. While trade wars and tariffs may eventually normalize, I'm sure they will all come back and normalize in a matter of time, the emotional scars from threats, name-calling, and the public humiliation of countries and leaders can persist for much longer. It is vital to engage in serious public diplomacy to mend relationships and promptly restore trust among nations. Effective communication and a commitment to respectful dialogue are necessary to foster reconciliation and collaboration moving forward. In summary, both trade and Rotary strive for a future marked by peace and prosperity. Trade acts as a powerful mechanism, much like Rotary, for economic development, and when combined with cultural understanding, it can create meaningful, lasting partnerships. As Rotarians, we are uniquely positioned to advocate for open, equitable, and respectful trade practices. By leveraging our shared values and commitment to service, we can help shape a world where trade and cultural appreciation pave the way to stability and peace. Thank you for your attention and for your unwavering commitment to making a positive impact in the world.
Thank you, Tareen, for a very comprehensive overview of several factors, including how Rotary may play a role moving forward. So we have a few minutes, and if okay with you, we'll take some questions. So for those who seek to ask a question, please obtain the mic from Peter Dakin, state your name, stand up, and let's have some great roaring questions. Brief, okay.
Nervous loss. Can I kick off?
Sorry, Bilal, yeah.
So, in terms of the trade war, you talk about the fact that it's in nobody's favor, right? The tit for tat response is in nobody's favor, but you have to assume that there's a level of non-seriousness, and there's an assumption there that there are reasonable parties involved in this trade war. What would your opinion be when one party is being completely unreasonable, right, and not playing by the rules? In that scenario, wouldn't a tit for tat response be exactly the thing that you would do?
Thank you. Like I mentioned, tit for tat is not a mature or a reasonable response, right? And like I said, what we see today, in my view, personal view, is driven mostly by domestic compulsions because when somebody gets elected promising certain things, they want to be seen to be implementing those. Fundamentally, somebody, like I said, who has flourished under the open, in the free trade world, I don't believe tariffs and restriction, trade and non-trade barriers are good for anybody. We have moved far away from there. And we have seen the benefits of those. I also, as I mentioned, agree that not everybody has been beneficiary of this free trade economy, and some sections of countries and some people within those countries seem to believe that they've been left out of the benefits of globalization, especially when multinational companies are garnering. For example, mom and pop shops in Australia, they've disappeared pretty much because you have large multinational companies dictating price, dictating logistics. So I think like I said, it's time for course correction, not to throw the baby in the water, right? It's time for the leaders to get together and think, how can we make it more inclusive, more meaningful? Because we've got 30 years since the WTO was formed. So I'm sure the world has changed. Nobody would have foreseen what kind of challenges might emerge 30 years from then. It's time definitely for us to revisit and see what are the concerns of these countries and the sections of population and how we can address them. But I certainly don't believe that going back to tariff war or restricting movement of people or ideas or technologies or critical minerals or components that are required for the global benefit are required. I'll give you one example. We had COVID just 5-6 years ago. What if then the 2 or 3 countries that made vaccines, that's UK, US, and India, I don't know if anybody, maybe China also, a few countries, they said, no, we're not going to share our vaccine with anybody, right? It's our vaccine. How would the rest of the world react to that? So I think we have come a long way from the time, from the 70s and 80s when countries were closed and they say, okay, it's my turf, it's your turf. It's a globally integrated economy. It's very difficult to go back and break it. And the turmoil we see today is exactly because somebody's trying to do that. But I don't think it's sustainable. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. David, my question is about the Rotary Club of Madras.
My friend, I saw you in Chennai. You played a beautiful piano.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, you've got to visit the Rotary Club of Madras. Beautiful people, beautiful surroundings, and insight into the best of what the country has to offer. And it leads to great relationships. So thank you very much. So what is Rotary Madras doing at the moment? What's the main focus of your work?
Okay, as I said, Rotary Club of Madras is the third oldest, in fact, the second oldest surviving because one of them closed down within 4 years. And over the last 96 years, since 1929, we have undertaken a number of major projects. One of them is polio eradication. We were at the forefront because, South Asia, especially in the developing countries in those days, polio was a massive issue for people. So Rotary spearheaded that. Second, when tsunami happened, our club was right at the forefront. People, I know some of my colleagues spending weeks and months together in rehabilitation of the people, providing them employment, providing education for the kids who had lost their schools and everything else. And there's one ongoing project we have is called the Boys Town, where we pick up kids who are affected by, I heard somebody, in New South Wales, it's a priority for, domestic violence. So we pick up those kids and we shelter them, educate them, and we provide them jobs. That's our ongoing project. And I don't know the exact number, but it runs into hundreds every year who we pick up. And there are schools across, close to Chennai, across that region, who get educated, fed, clothed, and provide employment. And many of them, after they get employment, come back and say, I'm here because of Rotary, so I'm going to do exactly what you did to me. They are sort of contributing a part of their salary for the upliftment of similar children.
Very good. Thanks, Josh. Just wondering whether you might be able to give us an update on the trade relations between Australia and India, and what are the particular strengths and weaknesses of that relationship?
Okay, thank you. I think
And you've got a minute.
from the time I started in 1995, like I said, our trade was less than $500 million, and there was no political will or economic strength to forge a relationship. But today, it's an entirely different story. I think India would be one of Australia's most vibrant and promising trading partner. Not just trading, I would say, it extends beyond trade, politics, defense, security, people, of course, cricket. So I think it's a very important relationship. And we have just negotiated 2 years ago the comprehensive economic trade agreement. And the free trade agreement is under discussion for a few years. Hopefully, it should conclude soon. And we are part of Quad, which is a very, very powerful defense coalition of US, Japan, India, Australia. So I think it extends well beyond all of that. To sum it up, I think it's one of the most promising partnerships or relationship. It's a strategic partnership. It's just not even a partnership either. It's been elevated to the level of strategic partnership, and India is very, very important across all levels.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I know that I'm sure Tariq will be able to stay here for a short while afterwards to have a chat to you on the more in-depth relationship matters, and also how Rotary can and we can play a more pivotal role both within our community from Tariq's learnings overseas, as well as partnering in our region. So again, please join me in thanking Tariq for his fascinating expose. And here you are. In our great tradition, we have some Rotary socks for you. So it has been seen worn by a number of our members and guests
Not
around
the same
town.
socks, right?
Not the same socks, no. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you,
And,
thank you, Chris.
we will continue pushing to recruit you to join our club.
Like I said, I'm back here, so anytime.
Good, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank the visitors and guests for attending. Thanks also to our MC, Peter Dakin, and for the reflection, Tony Battini. Tony somewhere, there is. Okay, great, thanks, Tony. And our lunch setup and reception teams for their efforts. Please, if you can stay back for a few minutes to assist with the pack-up, they would be very appreciative. A reminder, next week we are back here, number 35 for lunch. Our guest speaker will be another international person, Ambassador Dr. Elias Munchia, High Commissioner to Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific, Republic of Zambia, speaking on Australian, African and International Chamber Dialogue, Unlocking Opportunities with Zambia. Wishing you all a happy and safe Easter break, and we look forward to you joining us to hear Ambassador Munchia next week.